Let's go.
Welcome to The Insights. I'm Shabana Hassan, and today we will dive into a critical topic that affects millions who rely on flexible income streams. This episode, athletes, gig workers, artists, are they financially protected? We'll explore the financial realities and challenges faced by our athletes, gig workers, and artists. With irregular income streams and often minimal job security, these groups face unique risk when it comes to financial stability, protection, and planning. In an age where the gig economy is thriving, questions arise. How secure are these individuals in today's economic landscape? Are current systems robust enough to ensure they thrive financially, or are there gaps that need addressing? Before we begin our discussion, let us first set the stage by looking at the current financial landscapes of these professions and the challenges they face. Over to you, Rashida.
Thank you, Shabana, and good day to everyone. Today, we will dive into the financial landscape that surrounds some of our most dynamic and creative individuals, athletes, gig workers, and artists. As we explore their financial realities, let's take a closer look at the statistics that illuminate their challenges. To start, the Malaysian Sports Council reports that around 60% of Malaysian athletes depend on irregular income streams, often supplemented by sponsorships and endorsements. This volatility leaves them in a precarious financial situation, devoid of a stable paycheck. In fact, research from the AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Centre, FEWRC, in 2022 revealed that 5 out of 10 Malaysian athletes were financially vulnerable, particularly young athletes who were the most affected. A staggering 33% reported not having enough savings to cover unexpected expenses and struggled to even raise 1,000 ringgit in case of emergencies. This vulnerability is compounded by a lack of basic financial knowledge, leaving many unprepared for financial challenges. In the realm of the arts, a recent study by the Ministry of Youth and Sports found that more than 50% of Malaysian artists struggle with financial management. The root of this issue lies in their sporadic income and the lack of tailored financial literacy programs to help them navigate their unique challenges. Compounding this vulnerability is the absence of social security and health insurance, which makes it even harder for artists to weather financial storms. Now, let us turn to the gig economy. A survey conducted by the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research revealed that 75% of gig workers expressed significant concerns regarding their financial security, particularly in relation to health benefits and retirement plans. Despite the rapid rise of platforms like Grab and Foodpanda, many gig workers find themselves lacking the protections that traditional employment offers, facing irregular earnings and job instability. Adding to this, AKPK's recent findings indicate that 45% of gig workers aged 18 to 30 have no savings plans in place. This demographic is particularly susceptible to financial stress, exacerbated by the high cost of living and their reliance on unpredictable income sources. With these statistics in mind, we must then ask ourselves, what can be done to better support these vulnerable groups? It is clear that they face unique financial challenges that traditional systems may not adequately address. As we explore today's topic, let us consider the solutions and innovations needed to empower our athletes, gig workers, and artists to achieve financial security and resilience in the ever-evolving economic landscape. And with that, let us turn back to Shabana to continue this discussion. Back to you, Shabana.
Let's now dive into this discourse with our expert guest, who is also the director of the Social Wellbeing Research Centre, University Malaya, and the president of Malaysian Economic Association. Please welcome Professor Datuk Dr. Norma Mansur. Thank you, Datuk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
How are you, Datuk?
Fine, thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
And, I hope you are well too.
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. So, Datuk, back to my question to you. I would like to start our discussion on this topic, retirement, right? For most of us, retirement is largely based on our EPF contributions to, and also our saving plans. But for those whose careers actually rely on short-term projects, variable income or early retirement age, savings for retirement, Datuk, can be a real challenge for them. So my question, do you agree that actually many athletes, artists and gig workers, they face with uncertainty when it comes to their retirement, please?
Thank you. And to viewers, Assalamualaikum and very good morning. And thank you for having me here. I agree. For those who are engaged in non-formal sectors, such as, or now termed as gig workers, because they don't perform or they don't get it's not a regular job, therefore their income is not regular. If they are not careful and don't plan from the start, certainly retirement will be a challenge. But if they do plan and they are financially literate, educated and act on it, then they can prevent from being in that situation where the lack of income security when they retire.
Datuk, based on my understanding of financial literacy, the most basic understanding will be to be for someone to be able to differentiate between what are their needs and what are their wants. It's because of a certain lifestyle that they are used to, right? So my question, Datuk, without access to mandatory social protections, they can be highly vulnerable financially, and especially if they lack in solid savings plan. Yeah. So, do you think that a career as an artist can actually sustain for a comfortable retirement lifestyle? What do you think?
There are two aspects to layer of your question. One is on the individual, to know the difference between needs and wants. We have the Belanjawanku, or what is called the reference budget at the center that we work with the EPF, and there is also an app. So I would encourage and urge young people to look into our website or to download the App Store. From the App Store, the app called Belanjawanku, so that we guide you on how to plan, to differentiate between needs and wants. So what is important is your needs. That's core. That's very important. It's got to be consistent. You can't go without paying your rent. You can't go on without
certain basic food expenses,
or even transportation. Otherwise, you can't get to work. So those are the 9 household categories that we propose, and also 11 types of households that we have within our plan. So that is to help our young people. It's from the ages of 18 to the age of 40 on how they should spend, and savings is an important component of the reference budget or the Belanjawanku. So please do download from the App Store. And the other aspect is the mandatory that should be the public policy. So it has to come in very strongly, considering that not just Malaysia, but many other countries too, where self-employment is becoming more and more popular. It can be a gig type of work or other types of self-employment. So because of that, the government should introduce a policy that would make it mandatory, and that there is we have the voluntary scheme for that. It is called social self-employed social security scheme, which you can voluntarily. Now it's 19 sectors contribute into that scheme, which will protect you during injuries. And also for EPF, there's also Aisaraan, which is now contributed by about 400,000 Malaysians.
These are voluntary contributions.
Voluntary contribution. But to just be aware that you have to save and you have to take up insurance, be it a public insurance like the self-employed social security or private type of insurance, but you have to think of your emergencies and also when you are unable to work or when you are retired.
I think we have to look at 2 areas, right, Datuk? One is our personal understanding on financial literacy, and the other is on the governmental efforts in promoting, the needs and the importance of having a proper retirement, especially for this type of workers, right, Datuk?
Definitely.
Yes. Thank you very much, Datuk. We will now have a very short break. Don't go away. More will be discussed right after this.
Let's go. Let's go.
Welcome back to The Insights. In this episode, we are talking about the financial vulnerability faced by athletes, artists and gig workers. And I have here with me Datuk Norma Manso, and in the previous segment, Datuk, we have discussed about the retirement readiness of this group of workers, So now let's work backwards and get into the key financial challenges faced by these individuals, Datuk. Like we've discussed in the earlier segment, the areas to address the financial challenges faced by them is one, to have a better understanding on financial literacy, followed by governmental efforts from making certain contributions voluntary to compulsory. But at the same time, Datuk, sometimes this group of workers, their journey to financial stability is further complicated by not just what we've discussed, but at the same time by inconsistent income, short career spans, and sometimes even risk like injury, which will further impact their performance and careers. So my question to you, Dato, is the profession of being an artist, gig workers, and even athlete are known to have a consistent income or otherwise?
My response to that is it would be three things. Number one, I think the income itself need not necessarily be high income. For some types of gigs, yes, they are good income, but for others, they are not. So I think the society as a whole has to be aware that we do have the minimum wage income, which is going to be 1,700, but I think one has to be fair. That is also about the cost of living in Malaysia. So I think both parties, the person who employed or who give out the gig work, who outsource the gig work, has to also realize this. So number one is the income itself. Sometimes the income is too low to save. Then secondly, it is about financial behavior. The need to feel that you have to plan and you have to save. And the third point is on the public policy. On the government's policy or public policy that you refer to, Shabana, we propose that we should look at true multi-tier type of protection. At the lowest layer or the lowest tier should be government supported. And this means wealth tested. That for those who are rich, we are starting. We are looking into how with the subsidy, a fuel subsidy, for instance, for petrol, now we are going to look at the top 10% or 15%. So if we have that administrative data, we can remove that. But for the rest, at least we provide the basic or the social protection floor. Because as I mentioned, that number one is that the income is low, number two is not consistent, and number three is the behavior, which should be nudged through other interventions as well. But coming from the government, or the government has to look into that basic protection. And I think this is where for 2025, the government is allocating 100 million in order to support the self-employed social security to provide that very basic. This is for injury. But for the retirement, currently, the Aisaraan, as I mentioned, is about 400,000 individuals are contributing to Aisaraan. But there are many more, especially women who are not part of the formal sector or may not even be part of the gig workers. So at the lowest tier or at the floor level, the very basic level, the government has to look into providing everyone that basic kind of protection, especially when Malaysia is soon becoming a high-income nation, joining the OECD. So we have to compare on how OECD countries too look out for their citizens, and the solidarity among the population as well has to be high in order for us to live better or to have better lives together.
Yes, I completely agree, Dato. And you also did mention about an injury earlier, right? So my question, Dato, do you agree actually that these groups are particularly susceptible to injuries that could actually further jeopardize their career?
Injury can happen to anyone, So one cannot underestimate.
Yeah, but with certain types of group that we, like for example, if a staff is injured, they will have the company to cover for them. But in this kind of situation, that's where the risk is. What's your view on that?
Yeah, that is why I would reiterate that injury can happen to anyone. So one has to take protection. Yes. So having that kind of, for those who cannot afford, the government is providing that support, I would hope, that would really get to the target where for those who are not
self-employed,
who are self-employed should be supported for them to have this takaful insurance, which is provided by PKSO or any other kind of insurance, in order for them to prevent if things like this happen. And as you said, artists, athletes, injury is almost second nature to them. Athletes especially, second nature to them. So for them to overcome the challenge of not having a job while they are recuperating, it's something that has to be protected, that has to be supported.
Yes, and I think everything all stems back to the understanding of financial literacy, right, Dato'? Yeah. And as how have been mentioned by Rushida earlier, the statistics that mentioned by Rushida, it was actually very shocking, for us to know that the financial vulnerability, especially towards the young athletes, the impact of their limited financial knowledge. So given these trends among the athletes, could we be saying similar financial struggles towards the gig workers and artists as well?
Definitely. The World Bank data shows that it was about less than 40% of Malaysians are financially literate. So what does that mean? Although literacy does not mean that you actually do it, but financial planning has to be, or financial management has to be inculturated. Yeah, it should be part of our culture by now.
Yes.
You pointed out the differentiation between one has to differentiate between needs and wants. Yes. What's important is to know that this is not needs, these are wants that you're going for. Yeah. So once you're able to have that kind of discipline, so it is a fiscal discipline that one should exercise when one has the first income, when your parents give you pocket money. They should be part of that pocket money that should be saved. So we should start from very young. Yeah,
but it's not too late. They have financial literacy programs for children as well, right?
Exactly. So hopefully, we will all converge into us becoming a more financial literate and better, more responsible when it comes to our financial management.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dato', for your insightful information. Okay, let's take a short break and we will be leaving you with a short video.
Let's go. Let's go.
Based on what I know, some of the celebrities I'm around, there is no plan. Okay, we all think that we are going to be artists forever and we will be popular forever and we will get paid forever, which is not the fact. We all know that after a couple of years, you're popular, then you start to decline slightly, and then before you finally have to accept like roles of the elderly actor, you smaller roles. Okay, now the issue will be this: a lot of people who do acting or who are celebrity, we do it because of passion. The problem with this passion is we will do work regardless time, regardless whatever, because we enjoy doing what we do. Problem is most of us don't have any business acumen. We don't have a financial planning for whatever money we make. And our money is periodical. Kita bukan gaji bulan. We're not monthly salary people. So what happens is for prolific people in the industry, I'll talk about actors lah. Kalau prolific means every month dia ada job. He has work, right? So kalau dia ada job every month, let's say he is a leading man, 1 month he might make 20-30 grand. But kalau middle income sikit, maybe 15, and then kalau kecil sikit lagi role, maybe 8. As you might or might not know, people in the entertainment industry, we receive a periodical income. Most of us are freelancers, right? Unless you have a company or you belong to a company, then you might get a monthly income. Contohnya, if dulu you are with Metro Wealth salary their actors, macam Shaw Brothers dulu, it's the same format. But most of us, smaller companies, we can't afford to salary the players. So what we do is, upon projects, then we will call the actors to come in, right? So in that sense, majority of the people in the business are income periodically, which means what? At the end of, let's say, one project, you get paid of like a big amount, right? If you're a main actor, you might get 30,000, 40,000, 80,000, 90,000 in one go. And that's a dangerous thing. because what happens is then you have the ability to buy whatever you want. So a lot of people do. Okay, you're looking for sneakers, you're looking for a bike, you're looking for everything can be bought at that time. But the problem is, again, we don't plan for the future. So because we think next income, I'll plan for the future. Then next income, I'll plan. In actual fact, in the future never come when you start to plan. This is one thing I feel is lacking in our education system, the financial education. You teach the children everything else, but you don't teach them how to take care of their money, kan? Because school is when your parents start giving you the 5 ringgit, the 10 ringgit for you to then, okay, now what you do with the money. I had the opportunity to go to one international school who actually started to practice this. They're teaching young kids how to turn their hobbies into businesses so that they would have income. So to me, that's really great. So now coming back to this, a lot of celebrities realized they needed a second income or a third income during times of hardship, especially during COVID time when we all couldn't work. No actors couldn't work. People in the business, nobody could work because we can't go out of the house, we can't go do public performance. So that really affected a lot of artists until they actually had to look for alternative means to survive, which in hindsight is the best thing for the artist. Realizing that, I can't rely on one thing. My eggs are all in this basket. I have to spread them out. And that's when people started looking at alternative business. But again, we are not business people. Looking to do business is like, this makes money, let's put money into this. And then suddenly there's no management. We don't understand how to manage the business. So good intentions don't always equate to good result. We have to have education. Regardless, whatever we do, we must have education. And that's what I feel all this Persatuan should be doing. Educate your members, educate the actors, educate the directors, educate so that they understand that they can't just live based on their main job, which is acting or directing or whatever. They need to find other means. Kita in this industry ni, the one thing that we really always remember and is a big reminder for us is Allahyarham Tan Sri Ramli. Allahyarham Tan Sri Ramli, famous, everybody knows, she's loved by everyone. He should, and his family should be rolling in money, but they're not. And the reason is because there was no financial planning available to him, I would say. Maybe that kind of financial education, he wasn't in the circle where people were around him would say, hey, let me help you manage your fund, or I'll tell you what to do. So for him is, what we hear stories of him is, people need to borrow money, he will give them. And he will always say, Allahyarham Tan Sri Ramli will always say, I'm just merely holding this money for that person. If that person asks me, so he will give me money. Which means his heart is in a good place, and somebody that we are proud of. But again, when he died a pauper. His family doesn't reap any benefits from whatever he's doing. To a big extent, we are trying to change that, by remembering him. I said, we don't want this to happen to our families. We don't want this to happen to the people we love. And that's why we try and learn something.
Welcome back to the Insights. So, Dato', before we actually approach to the end of our discussion, let us consider some very few vital points. Yeah, given the unique challenges these groups currently face, so in your view, Dato', do you think they should actually be receiving increased protections, such as social security plans that is specifically tailored to their needs?
Exactly. This is a progressive way of looking at social protection, which is coming from the demand side or the needs of an individual. So it's not so much of the job, but it's more of how you protect the individual, you protect the Malaysians for their well-being in the future, or the well-being even when they're sick. Yeah? So in order to do that, as I mentioned, and I think this is important as a country going forward, for us to have the multi-tiered type of protection at the lowest level, and especially for those who can't afford, then it should be tax-financed or tax-based kind of social protection against injury and against old age, or even when you are children. Yeah? So this kind of social protection is what we call the floor. And the second layer should go towards which is contributory. And this should be made mandatory. That for those, it depends on how much that we want for the payment to be made when one is sick or when one has retired. Yeah? So that contribution should be coming from everyone, and it's mandatory since the age of working age. So you can start at the age of 18, for instance, and it can be a small amount or a big amount for those who can afford more. So there should be some kind of cross-subsidization where the higher income would support the lower income, because this would ensure that we'll have a good and adequate, or at least meeting some kind of adequacy requirement that when you are retired. Because if you are just doing your individual account, like the EPF account, it's only coming from your contribution, that will be very small. Or even going with SOCSO's contribution, yeah? But if you were to have that element of cross-subsidization or supporting a redistribution element in that type of fund, then it will ensure that everyone receives some kind of income, or I would consider adequate for you to retire or when you are injured. So making it mandatory and the type of investment that would ensure that everyone contributes is the way forward. Unlike the current system where it's voluntary for some and it is mandatory for a certain group. Yeah, so that is not necessarily enough to protect everyone.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Dato'. And at the same time, besides all these measures that you've just highlighted, do you see any other additional support that we could actually offer to these young individuals who are just about to enter into these fields to ensure that they can actually start with a stable footing?
And when they are 18, whether they join the workforce or they're still studying, you can always, if you make it automatic and mandatory at the age of 18, that you should contribute into a fund which would insure you against injury, it could insure you against retirement. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what kind of job you get into, whether the job would provide you consistent income or not. If you are injured, you will be able to, you have an insurance, so to speak. So having that kind of basic protection is very important, especially when young people are getting to, they are not, some young people are not interested to get into formal work with all its rigidities. They would rather go a flexible and creative industry. So this kind of industry is not necessarily secured. So for that purpose, and I think Malaysians are getting into that kind of innovation, creativity, and I think Malaysians are very talented. Therefore, I think aside from educating them and nudging their behaviors, there should be some kind of protection, the formal protection coming from the government or from the policy side to ensure that if anything goes wrong, it doesn't matter what job you do. You are participating in the economy. You are productive. You're not sleeping. So getting into the economy, being active into the economy means that you are contributing to the productivity of the country. So what is the role of public policy to ensure that they're also protected? So this is what we're suggesting, that at the lowest level, every adult from the age of, you can start 15 if some kids are working since 15. But I would suggest 18 would be a fair age to start providing that kind of protection to every Malaysian, so that they're not worried that, whether this job has any social security such EPF or so. So they don't have to worry because the basic protection is already there.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Dato'. No matter how not flexible their job is, they are actually providing to the economy. And it is the responsibility of the stakeholders to provide security to them, right, Dato'? Yeah?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much, Dato'. We have almost arrived to the end of our episode for today. But before we end it, I would like to have another question for you to answer. I want you to look at it from a macro perspective, Dato'. What do you think we should work on, to further strengthen the ecosystem of the social protection for these groups, to ensure that the both new and also established professionals are well supported throughout their career?
Having a stronger social safety net or social protection for the country that has been highlighted by many studies and many advisory reports that we get for Malaysia. So that's the way to go, as I mentioned, not just here, everywhere. I think the Malaysian Social Protection Council is looking into this and having a stronger multi-layer or multi-tier type of social security will be the way to go, that you protect everyone in the country. You protect against injury while you are working, and protecting against retirement. But I think the minimum wage, having a minimum wage and having the revision every 2 or 3 years, which is mandatory, that's according to the Act, is the way also to protect Malaysians in order for them to ensure their well-being in the future.
Thank you very much, Dato, for your insightful information. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our discussion. To recall, we have discussed the financial realities faced by artists, athletes, and gig workers, the unpredictable nature of their incomes, the pressure they encounter, and the gaps in financial protection that leaves many without a safety net for their retirement. Therefore, it is crucial to consider ways to build stronger systems of support, whether through social security options, accessible financial education, or even injury protection. Let's continue to advocate for policies and programs that will help this professional plan for a financially secured and better well-being. A special thank you once again to Professor Dr. Norma Mansor for sharing her valuable insights and perspectives that have actually deepened our understanding of these issues. And to the viewers, thank you for watching The Insights, and we will see you again in the next episode. Assalamualaikum and bye.
Let's go.